Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to one and all for coming to the sessions where we will be talking about framework for capturing value from big data. My name is Sreedharan Arumugam. People call me Sri, so Sri Arumugam is my name officially. I'm the Director for Solution Engineering and under Business Technology Platform for Southeast Asia in SAP. So before we start off, right, I thought let me introduce to you the different varieties of data or attributes of big data, right? When you talk about big data, there are four attributes that comes to my mind: volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. Let me just pause for a minute and talk to you on each of these blocks, right? So volume, when we say volume, the volume of data has grown over the years. In the last 2 years, we see that data has grown to 5 zettabytes. When we talk about zettabytes, it's 2 to the power of 70. That's the volume of data that we're talking about, right? In terms of big data, when you're talking about velocity, is the data that is coming in high speed. Okay, the data now we are able to capture data from sensors. We are able to capture data in real time. We are able to capture data at every interval of our life, right? Let's take an example of our own self, right? When you are going to office, the first thing that you do, get up in the morning, go to one of the social medias, either Twitter or a Facebook, and you either like something, you tweet something, you create data, right? And then you get dressed up, you want to go to office, you book a taxi, and there you are putting a footprint of data, right? So data is growing, and the velocity, the speed at which it is growing is also high because we have a lot of touch points. The next thing is about variety of data. Data variety can be categorized into three categories, right? One is structured data, unstructured data, and semi-structured data. An example of unstructured data is Excel or something on a database that we store, right? A semi-structured data could be something like an XML, where we have both structured and semi-structured into play. And then we have some photographs or we have some videos. These are our unstructured data, especially on the social medias, and these are growing very high, very heavily, right? And when we talk about the last pillar, which is the veracity of the data, right? Veracity is nothing but the trustworthiness of the data. How trustworthy is that data, and how can you quantify that, and how can you validate it, right? So these four attributes is where big data comes into play, right? And to my understanding, I have put them as the D3M maturity models. The D3M is nothing but data-driven decision making. Today, everybody is making decision based on data. If you don't have data, the decisions could be wrong. And today we have robots making decisions, AI making decisions for you, machines making decisions for you. But these are basically driven by data that has been captured, right? Now, let's take your own organization, right? You might be in one of these stages. Let me go one at a time, right? Stage one is where we investigate. An organization is not focused on a data-driven making strategy. And there is where the first step comes in, for you to identify the best steps and build a buy-in and get your key executives to make sure that you are aligned and they are supportive towards this decisions, right? To identify yourself that there is a problem and you want to investigate. Then you move to the second stage, where this is the stage of initiation. As a leaders of the organizations see some potential values in the D3M, they start to investigate, and they now see that how can we start and create POCs to check valuabilities of that data. So there what you do is you go deep dive to find out the quality of data and seek the best quality of data by starting to do a small POCs that can be provide some value to you. And based on this POC, we move to the next stage, which is called the mobilizing state. The state where the organization feels that, hey, now, once the executives have seen the results from the POCs, they are looking to do analytics. They are looking to engage with the data scientist, identify data analysts, data scientists within your organizations to make sure that you can have identified some potential impact based on these D3 models, right? So here we work together and cleanse the integrated data and the data that brings value to you, put together a team of analysts, a scientist who can explore the edges of insights to get to this D3 model, okay? The next phase, once we are able to mobilize, okay, here we have identified a department, we have done a POC, we've seen the value, now we scale. We scale, basically an organizations could scale from one country to multiple countries, or maybe from one divisions to another divisions, or to the entire geographic that they have, right? They want to scale across. And here again, I define this as the scalability, and the decision making is still with the leaders of the organizations, and they make the decisions based on what they see the value here. Here is the stage where we cleanse data using data scientists, predict certain things, use AI based technologies, artificial intelligence, whatever you want to use. We create models, and these models are not create ones and use it, but it is a maturity model. That means this model gets evolved day after day, right? As you see new data coming and you see the new environment changing, you create new models, right? Once you have done with this, here comes the insights from the data. The employees are importance of the data is across the organization, everybody knows. Now it comes to the stage of the final stage where we give each and every employees in the organizations the importance of data, and they start thinking like a data analyst and leverage this D3 model, right? No more do we need only data scientists to think like, to get analysis, to define some values out of data, but every employee within the organizations looks at it and says, hey, yes, I am responsible for this. And therefore what happens is everybody owns the data. Everybody makes sure that you put some trustworthiness in the data, you put real data, you capture real data, you make sure that the data that is there is validated, and you are able to get some uh, renowned insights from the data, that everybody now in the organizations are in this maturity model. And this is what I define as the 5 stages of an organizations. I think I've spoken for some time, and I want to pause here for some questions, or for you to understand and analyze which stage are you in this maturity model. Which stage is your organizations in this maturity model? I give you maybe 1 minute to think about it, and maybe you can put in the chat as to which stage are you in, and probably if you can resonate on the same ideas that I had of keeping these stages as to stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. You can also unmute and ask question at this point of time. This is a time I have given you about 1 or 2 minutes. If anybody has any questions to be asked, we could ask at this moment of time. Well, I think all of us are pondering on which stage we are in. That's what I assume. Let's move on, right? Now, from here, let me show you what is the impact, or what 4 things can you do with data, right? First and foremost, we need to detect. That means you need to identify that there is a problem. Okay. When there is a problem, you start reflecting on it. Okay. And then once you reflect on that problem, you detected it, you are now reflecting on it. After reflecting, now you make sure that you connect multiple things to identify where the problem arises and how can I resolve this. And basically, now when I have connected systems, all the data are coming. Now I have a big data here, and the data is correct. I've corrected the data, I've connected the data, and now I'm able to solve problem as the problem occurs. Now, that is a phase where we use some predictive analytics or machine learning capabilities where you're able to predict. That means till now, I was in a reactive mode. How can I be proactive, right? Here is a stage where you will be proactive in terms of getting to know a solution for a problem that might occur in the future. Okay, so that's the way I look at it. What the four things that you can do with the data, right? First, detect. For example, let's say that I have a problem. Okay, I am getting this temperature of I'm actually scanning a temperature of a refrigerator. Let's say that every now and then there is a fluctuations. The temperature should not go beyond certain period of certain a certain level, or it should not come certain level. And this is the problem that I see, that every time there is a fluctuations. Why is this fluctuations happening, right? Then I reflect on it, I think over it, i I want to get a solution for it. At that point in time, i I am able to say that, hey, this is the time it occurs. Okay, and then what I do, I just go and solve the problem. So I'm still in a reactive mode. Now I want to know whether there are multiple such events happening, and I connect everything together. Once we are connected everything together, now we can see that, hey, yes, not only this refrigerator, there are refrigerator installed in multiple other locations. The same thing happens. So you're able to connect it, and now you're able to solve that problem. But then prediction is, hey, what if this happens? How do I solve this problem? Okay, this could be taken into any scenarios, right? So this is a principle that you can follow for anything. For example, let's take an example of the things that happened during COVID, right? Nobody expected that people will be working from home. There was no concept of working from home, right? Everybody should come to office was the important thing, right? But then COVID came, we were stuck at home, we couldn't come to office. But then we reflected on it, people started to act immediately, and then there was this new way of looking at things. E-commerce came into play, right? And they connected multiple things. Now everything was connected, the supply chains and everything was remodeled, and there were new things that they innovated and stuff like that. And now if such another event happens like COVID, right, something bigger than that, we are able to predict it earlier, and then we are able to be prepared for it, right? So that's the four things that I put in this four as the four pillars for it. Yeah. So therefore, think about it, right? Think about within your organizations, uh, how can I use this data? What can this data do to my organizations? Is data really important? Big data was actually, it's not a solution or anything like that. It's basically uh, a principle, right, that you need to follow and make sure that your organizations is in the right track, whether you're able to detect it, you're able to reflect it, you're able to connect things. Okay, and here I'm not talking about any solutions as such. I'm not trying to tell you this is the solutions you need to do, but there are a lot of solutions to detect. There are a lot of solutions for you to reflect on it, try to solve the problem. And there are a lot of solutions. Even SAP provides some solutions where you can have a single source of truth, that we call, right, connect everything. Either pull in the data and put it in one place, or federate the data. Okay, federation is keep the tables wherever they are, keep the data wherever they are, and have something called as a virtual table, connect them, and then use predictive analytics or use machine learning capabilities to predict what could happen, right? And these are the four fundamental things that you can look and place them, write down them, and then start, analyzing and capture this value from the data, right? So again, I want to pause for 30 seconds or so. If anybody has any questions, comments, please put it on the chat. Let's take it up. Let's be a little interactive. Let's make this session a bit interactive. I don't want it to be monolithic and only I talk and stuff like that. So you can also talk if we do have 15 minutes for Q&A in the last. But if something comes up right away, you could ask them right now before I jump into the next slide. The moderator, can you let me know if there is anything in the chat that I could answer, because I cannot see the chat because my window is in a full screen mode. Hello? Any questions there?
Yes, Sri, there are a couple of questions that have been asked. So shall I project them on the screen already, or would you like to wait until at the end of the session?
Maybe one or two questions, we can take it up and then we can wait for the Q&A to answer all of them.
Okay, that's perfect. Let me share the first question with you. I think this is still a bit of a follow-up question from the five stages that you shared earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how can you objectively define in which of the 5 levels my organization is?
Okay, this is something that you need to ponder, right? If you look at the 5 maturity models that I talked about, right?
Yeah.
Now, yeah. So good question. I appreciate this question. The first thing is identify yourself in which stage you are in. The first stage is that an organization has not even focused on getting data, making sure that you have a data decision strategy itself. Okay, they're not even looking at big data at all. That's the first stage. Okay, the second stage is when the leaders from the organizations see that there is a potential value, okay, and start investigating and create some POCs. That means if your organization is right now starting to capture data, starting to understand that there is a problem, and then starting to create some POCs in a small way and seeing value out of it. And that's when the leaders or the executives are excited and they want to put more money into it. And that will be the third stage. The fourth stage is basically you have identified, you have got the problem, you know what technologies to be used, you know what AI based technology you should use, what which software should be used, and all that you have identified. Now you scale. That's where the organizations is in a full-fledged mode of scaling, right? And again, I told you at stage 4, when you are in stage 4, the organization data driven strategies are based on the leaders. The leaders have the dashboards, they make decisions. Now at the stage 5 is where the organization gives the ability to all employees to understand where they are, and they make sure that you are able to adapt and everybody is involved and everybody owns the data and says that, hey, I need to input correct data. Okay, so I hope I answered that question.
Absolutely. And we have one more.
Maybe we can take one more question before we continue.
Yeah, that's good. So there's one more question that is in, I will project it on the screen right now. And this is probably a little bit more of a technical question, but one of the attendees is asking, we are using SAP HANA. How can we better use the data that is in our HANA system? I don't know to what
Okay.
extent you're an HANA expert, but you might try to answer this one as well.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I did not want to, I did not want to talk about any products of SAP, because this was to be talking about how do we capture value from data, right? I did not want to tell any solutions about SAP, but since you brought up HANA, I'm forced to talk about it, right? For maybe 30 seconds, I'll talk about that, right? Now, as all of you, some of you know, or the person who asked the question knows, that HANA is an in-memory database, right? Now, in-memory database meaning everything is processed on the memory, okay? But there is also persistent layer on the database. That means the persistent layer in the disk, and we captured that as well, and the logs are also captured. So that means if something happens and the power fails, we are able to bring it back to the stage where it was immediately, right? With replaying the logs and making sure everything happens faster, right? Now, keeping HANA as the database, you're saying how can we get value from big data? Is that the question?
That's
Can you
what
repeat?
I assume. I don't have any additional background around the question, but I assume that is the question is the data that is stored in HANA. How can I make better use of that? That's, I think, the underlying question.
Okay, good. So the data that is stored in HANA is a structured data, right? That means you are storing structured data there, and HANA has this capability to do something called as federation as well. So HANA has the capabilities called smart data access, smart data integration. That means it can integrate from multiple sources. Say, for example, let's say that you have data in Hadoop, okay? And Hadoop has 10 terabytes of data, right? But your HANA box is 2 terabyte, okay? How do I use HANA to capitalize on Hadoop, right? Which is maybe 10, 20 terabytes, right? So HANA has this capability called smart data access, which means that you create virtual tables in HANA, and you actually just create virtual tables and access the data that is there in Hadoop only when it is required. That means you write queries and the data that is relevant to it pulls into HANA. That means you can use HANA as your big data solution and then capture the data from multiple other sources using smart data access. That's one way of looking at it. After this sessions, I will be also sharing you some white papers on big data services that we have in SAP, and some brochures as well, which you could use. And then I'll be sharing my contacts and my email ID also. If you have any questions related to that, you can please directly ask the question, and I'll be able to answer you. Yeah. Okay. In the interest of
I
time,
think that is a perfect follow-up to kind of move the product-specific discussions to the
yeah,
white papers. Good.
I don't want to discuss and make others unhappy and talking too much about SAP products. And that's deliberately, I have not put any products or anything about SAP in this particular forum. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Anyway, that's good question. And I hope I was able to answer those questions. So let's bring back our focus to where we were. And now that we talked about 4 things that we can do with the data, let me also say, now that we have collected the data, we are able to, the last part of it is how do I derive value? Okay. I have put them in my own understanding, the 6 ways that you can derive value from data, right? The first phase is you find a problem. Okay. The immediate thing is when you have identified that there is a problem itself, there is value. For example, let's say me, Sreedharan, okay? I have identified that I have an issue with my health. What should I do? Okay. Then I look at solutions to solve the problem. Okay. I may be going to doctor, I might do my exercises, I want to get up early. All these are some of the solutions that we have. So similarly, you have a lot of technologies, a lot of companies giving you a similar kind of solutions and stuff like that. So that's where you solve the problem, and that's you get some value there. So this value is actually, if you look at it, it's going upward, right? So when you find the problem, you solve the problem, you have now got some value. And why do I say that data is important is only when you are able to track something. For example, let me give you an example of myself, right? I identified to myself that I have a problem with my weight. I have to reduce 10 kilos. Okay. So what I did is I bought a cycle which costed me $4,000. Everybody were laughing at me. Why did you buy a cycle for $4,000? But that was an inspiration for me after I went to one of the places and started riding the cycle, and I found that that's a very good exercise. Now I do in a now that I've started, I bought this. I found a problem. The solution is I got a cycle. That's not enough. I started riding it. Now I do about 100 to 150 kilometers per week. That has cost. That is one such solution. And I also control my diet, right? And that's another way, right? Both these combined together, I lost about 10 kilos, right? So I solve my problem. Now this is again, I have to monitor and I have to get the data. I logged into Strava, I got the data collected, and I have to see those data. And that's the value of data. If I just have to do something somewhere without having any kind of data, then you don't derive value from it. This is just a simple example, but it could be, you can apply it wherever you want, to whichever solutions you want. Okay. The next comes is what if analysis. Now, what if analysis is something that once you have solved the problem, what if it occurs again? Okay, what if I am lazy and I sleep for the next 10-15 days? After the 15th day, I won't be able to ride the cycle for 100 kilometers. I won't be only be able to do 20 kilometers. Why? Because I did this. So that is what if analysis. What if something happens? How do I react to it? Okay. For example, this could be also, even when we had again, I'm bringing COVID in this context is because that's something that everybody experienced it, right? Not one company, every company experienced it. Okay. COVID occurred. We solved the problem by asking our employees to work from home. We gave them the infrastructures. We gave them some perks and here and there. Now, what if there is something that happens like COVID again? Are we prepared? So we prepare ourselves for that. So this is the first stage, right? Then we create models. Now, once we create a model, this model is a maturity model. When I say maturity model, it's not a model I define and I use it for 10 years. No. There were times 20 years back, somebody created a model for a particular industry, and that is working well for next decade or so. Nowadays, the models need to be changed based on the conditions. Conditions not only in the bubble of your own organizations, but the conditions surrounding you, the environments, okay, the things that causes you to change the model. You need to be adaptive. Okay, agility is the right word. Agility, you need to be agile to create new models. Okay, now once you are able to do that, then you see that there are certain tasks that could be done by AI, repetitive tasks, right? So these repetitive tasks, if I am able to do it with machines, why not, right? Cut down my cost. If a human can do 10 times, machine can do 100 times the same job, right? But then what happens is machines don't have knowledge. When I say knowledge, the human touch is not there. So, and the gut feeling is not there. Like, for example, let's say that I have a gut feeling that this will happen. Machine cannot do that. It can only predict. It can only tell you this will happen, this will happen, that will happen. But what is the decision making? Okay, augmented human, I've termed it as augmented human. I may be wrong or right, but this is something where human touch is gives you a greater value, the highest value that I feel. For example, let's say that, in a business, right, there was this territory which was doing 6 million. Suddenly that has changed to 2 million. Machines can tell you, yes, say, hey, bhai, the same environment, everybody is same, everything is same. Why did it happen like this, right? But then the top guy makes a drastic decision, says that, hey, you need to follow these principles. You need to change and maybe change the leader. And suddenly you see that drastic change happens and the 2 million becomes 8 million. Why is that so? That's because of human augmenting things along with machines. Okay. I think I'm on the top of the hour, and I hope I gave you some insights as to how do we capture value from data. And with that, I open up the floor for some questions. We have 15 minutes. We can bring up all the questions that were in the chat, and also we can open up, unmute yourself, or we can ask the moderator to unmute if anybody wants. So raise your hands. We could try to answer.
Absolutely. So let me open up for questions a little bit more in detail.
Yeah.
While you were talking, there is one question coming in. Let me project that question.
Yep.
And the question here is, what is the difference between intelligent AI and augmented humans? I think that
Beautiful.
was the previous slide, right? So maybe it's good to sort of dive into that a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, very good questions. I wanted somebody to ask this question. So when you say intelligent AI, it's basically any enterprises who want to become intelligent enterprises use intelligent AI, which means there are certain tasks that are repetitively done. If the repetition can be done by AI based technologies could be used. For example, let me give you an example. I want to convert all the purchase orders, purchase requests to purchase order automatically. Okay. And I only want to make sure that the purchase request, which is greater than 300K, to be approved by my manager. Now AI can do it, right? Machine learning can convert this to PO, post it into the system as well. Okay. Now, what happens? What is human, augmented human is wherein a human touch is required, or a decision making from this data that is coming in when they are creating it. There could be a glitch. Okay? Somebody is trying to manipulate something. Who will find it out? Right? Because of, say, let me give you another example, right? There is this man who is operating the machinery, right? His input was supposed to be 10, but he inputted 0. Okay. Because of that, the reports that are coming are all good, but of no use. But there is some issues there. This data that has been entered is wrong at somewhere. But my gut feeling says that everything is correct. But then you have to have that experience. The persons who are there in the organizations, some 10 years of experience, so he knows this person might have entered 0 instead of 10. Let's look there, which machine cannot do, right? And that's where I say this is augmented human. Okay. So augmented human is the gut feelings that, because of experiences within the organizations, you see that people who are there in the organizations for 10 years or 20 years, they know exactly where the problem would have been, who would have done this problem. They can predict very well, rather than machine knowing it. Machine only acts based on data, right? But machine does not know this person would have done it. These are something, what I call it as augmented human.
Very
Okay.
good. I think that's a very clear explanation, because it kind of separates the things where only the computers come in with the touch from a human, which is necessary for augmented humans. Very good. Another question that I see is related more towards KPIs. So you've explained here 6 ways in which data drives value.
Yeah.
Are there any specific KPIs that you can make around data sets that indicate their value?
Yeah. So, so see, basically, data sets are nothing but data that we categorize them into different blocks, right? Now, which data can derive value again depends on the organizations at to where which stage they are in. Okay, if they are in a stage of stage 5 maturity model, they have known everything, they've studied everything. Now their values depends on the right amount of data coming in. Okay, for example, let's say that you're getting data from sensors, right? All the sensor data that is coming in, if you're storing everything, it's a junk for you. But the sensor data has some value when it fluctuates certain things, and that fluctuated things, if you can capture it and predict certain things, that's where the value comes. Okay, and there are certain solutions that can help you on that as well, and then you can derive KPIs based on those things. Yeah.
Good, very good answer. So, as a host, it's always my honor to also ask one of the last questions. And
Yep.
based on your presentation and everything that you've explained, which I think was very clear and will provide our audience with a lot of value, if you can give kind of one key takeaway or a tip in order to get started, so the more practical parts, because what you've been presenting is obviously difficult to achieve. There's quite a number of steps that you need to go through. So for everyone in the audience who's listening and say, well, I would like to start establishing this framework to capture value from data. Where's the one place that you would need to start from your experience?
Yeah, so from my experience solving customers problem, especially related to data, i I really feel that the first thing that you need to do is cleanse your data. Cleanse your master data, if I can call it rightly, right? Your master data on which your transactions are happening, if that is cleansed, if that is clean, and if you can have some kind of mechanism within your organizations, either technology based or uh, you know in a way that everybody enters the right data into the system, that's the first step for you to achieve any value out of it, right? For example, the attributes of the data that I spoke about, right? And attributes of the data, depends on various ways, right? But then if you can first cleanse your data and then start to connect those data which are silos across and bring in that data to a single place, then you can get value out of it. Yeah. So the first step I would say that is to cleanse your data. So first is to clean it and make sure you keep it clean. That's the two principles that you can follow for an organizations to be very powerful, right?
Very, very good. I think that's very practical advice.
Yeah.
While you were talking, I saw that another question came in from one of the participants. So, if it's okay with you, I would like to moderate that as well because we still have a couple of minutes.
Yes, of course.
And the question is as follows: Data management is confidential for each and every organization. How can we prevent data misuse or any specific tools related to that?
Well, now you're inducing me to tell some solutions, right?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that some of the person that asked this question has a specific part in mind.
Yeah. So
Yeah, but please go ahead.
yeah. So data management is when you talk about data, right? How do you manage the data, right? So that's again a very important strategy when you look at in organizations. Now, data management strategies. How do you manage this data, right? There are data coming from different various aspects. So for example, let me not even talk about that, right? Let's take your phone. Okay, every day you capture so many things. Can we keep everything there? Every day you send so many SMSs, WhatsApp and other things. If you don't clean up, what happens? So there again, data strategy is something that you can start looking uh, within yourself before you look into the organization, even in your home, right? If you go into a kitchen, if there is everything labeled very well and everything is there, when you go into the kitchen, you're able to do your cooking very fast. Okay, but let's say that one of the spices is missing. You start searching for that spice. You waste 50% of the time searching for it, and there you're lost a lot of time. Similarly, in our organizations, if you are able to manage the data very well, keep it where it is required, make sure that everything is in proper place, then I think you can achieve a lot of things, right? Because I gave you an example of cooking because I love to cook, and cooking is my passion. So that's why I brought this example, if you don't mind.
That's a perfect example. Good. Before we finally close the session, let me quickly share with everyone else what is going to happen, because we have already our next sessions waiting to be shared. So give me a quick minute to show that. So as you know by now, is that during this Big Data Days, you always need to make a choice. Unfortunately, we cannot be everywhere at the same time. So in our next upcoming sessions, we have two different sessions to choose from. And one is actually a regular session, like the one we've been in the last few hours. And the other is going to be a more practical hands-on workshop. So in this track, we're going to be welcoming Sreedharan Jaru, who is a data scientist at AI and QA Healthcare. And he is going to be talking specifically more around AI as the new form of electricity. In the other track, which is the technical track, we're going to also learn from another data scientist, and that is going to be talking about a 2-hour workshop around how to build impactful data visualizations to convince stakeholders and drive change. And this is a 2-hour workshop, so if you're interested in that particular session, please dive into that, and there you will see some of the practical tools that can be used right there. With that, I would like to sincerely thank Sri for his good contribution towards Big Data Days. I hope you had fun with dealing with all of the difficult questions from the audience. There's always a lot of questions coming from these sessions. Thank you so much for sharing your very valuable insights. And what I also really appreciate is that you didn't dive too much into the solutions and really look at it from a best practice point of view. And that's exactly what these Big Data Days are all about. So thank you so much for your contribution, and thanks so much for being a part of Big Data Days 2022.
Thank you, William. And I have my slides there. If you want to share with them, share that.
Yeah.
And I have given the browsers as well, so please share it with them. And I have also given one of the last slides as a thank you slide with my name card and email ID with my phone number. Please feel free to ask questions. We are here to share. And if you have any thoughts, if you can share it with me as well, I'm willing to accept it. I'm not a guru or anything. I just shared what I know, but there are certain things that I don't know. I would love to hear from you as well. Thank you guys for attending this session, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about how to capture value from data. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sri. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.